Thank you. Welcome to Leaky Weeks. Prior to starting up my own language school in 1988, I had teaching experience in 4 different institutions. Having lived in several foreign countries and exposed to different languages, I was able to teach English, French, and Spanish. I also spoke Turkish and Italian, but had no formal knowledge of these languages to be able to teach them. My first job as a teacher was at a small local franchise, 3 branches. The methodology at the time was based on a book called English 900, something like 900 key phrases that students had to memorize. Funny, because even today I find students who remember entire sequences of phrases from the book, but do not speak English. Because the phrases were used in a preset content, and there was no actual interaction or learning, but rather memorizing, the methodology did not work. If you changed a single word in a question or the content, students would not know what to reply, pretty much like parrots. My second experience was at a larger Brazilian franchise. They had just opened a branch in a dead-end street. Not exactly a good idea, and were having difficulties to make it profitable. After a month there, the coordinator simply gave up and I took over. Needless to say, without experience, training or even minimum support from the franchisor, after improvising for 6 months I gave up as well. My third job was at an international franchise in a branch at a very high-end district. This school in particular specialized in private classes and had its own methodology which, surprisingly enough, did really work. But it required a large amount of adaptation, not because of the methodology itself, but because of the students. First discovery, each student is a different student. What works in one lesson will not necessarily work in another. You have to find what turns on each individual's learning mechanism, and that can be quite tricky. Second discovery, private English lessons are very similar to shrink sessions. Students will tell you their most inner secrets, and trust me, some of them are really heavy stuff. Third discovery, if you fall into the shrink trap and don't focus on the teaching, very little learning is actually happening. And, very frequently, students, because they do not have the vocabulary to express themselves, will use their mother tongue. After a few months they'll blame you for not learning anything, but that's another story. Because of its privileged location, this particular branch attracted a huge number of celebrities, high-profile people and executives. My first challenge was the drunken racist banker. It was hard enough to ignore the racist comments, but how the heck do you teach someone who is drunk? This took me a couple of weeks to figure out. Get drunk, or at least, happy yourself. I am serious, it works. And it does wonders for the frustration of not being able to teach. Another interesting student was a famous theater actor. The problem was he spoke too loud. The whole school would know when he had lessons and, for some reason, no teacher was able to reach him, so he asked for a new one every week. My first lesson was a disaster. I hardly said a word and he did all the loud talking. Knowing that he'd asked to replace me, as he had done with all other previous teachers, I had to find a solution. I was lost and the answer hit me during my second lesson. To every shout from the student, I shouted back and louder. It worked. I had found a way to gain his respect and therefore made him listen and triggered his learning mechanism. As individuals, we are all different, and sometimes ashamed of our flaws or limitations. As a teacher, you learned it the hard way, trying, for example, to teach colors to a colorblind student. After several lessons, I finally realized the student had some kind of difficulty. He would have saved me, and himself, many hours of lessons had he said he was colorblind. But I guess it is human nature for most people to simply try to hide their problems. More difficult to hide is a massive breast implant. An obvious discomfort and a backache because of the implants, a famous actress was unable to learn. She kept moving on the chair trying to find a more comfortable position to ease her pain. If I had breasts, and if they were just half as big as hers, I probably would have found the solution in a shorter time instead of 2 very frustrating months. During lessons, whenever I saw that she was in discomfort, I leaned on the table and rested my chest on it. Get the hint? Well, after a couple of lessons she looked at me very surprised and said, "I got it, thank you." Then, she grabbed her breasts and just laid them on the table. Like the unofficial mantra of the U.S. Marine Corps, improvising, adapting, and overcoming. Thank you all again. Stay tuned. This was only the first of many stories still to come. Check our blog for new posts. See you soon.